I've heard some people say I'm not a real writer, but that to me doesn't really make sense because you cannot say I'm not a real writer. You're either a writer or you're not. So you can say I'm not a globally recognized writer, I'm not a best-selling writer, or I'm not a prolific writer. Those statements would work. But who is a real writer? What makes a writer real? I used to believe that real writers were people who published books and made money from their books. So they wrote for a living. But then I then realized that this is actually not true, because not everyone is Stephen King, for example, right? So I then came to realize that a writer is simply someone who writes, just like a runner is someone who runs. But even this, it didn't really feel, this definition, a writer is someone who writes, is not really complete as a definition. It still feels something is missing, because write what? Write WhatsApp messages? A writer is someone who writes emails. We all write emails for work, but we're not all writers, right? And so I journaled a little bit about this to clarify my thinking about this. Who is a real writer? Who is a writer? And I came to a new definition. And to me, a writer is someone who writes as a result of giving in to this invisible force that pulls them, that attracts them to the page. And this force it comes from a desire or a need, or both. A desire to communicate, a desire to connect, a desire to create, or a need to express an idea, to express yourself, a need to escape. Many writers, they write to escape from reality. A desire to experience, because when you write, you're experiencing life under a new lens. So this is a force that is completely different from a force that draws us to writing an email or a WhatsApp message or a cover letter or a sales page. That's a different kind of writing. So I wouldn't define those people as writers in this sense. A writer is someone who gives in to this invisible force because they're driven to a desire. They're driven from a desire. They're driven by a need to connect, express, and communicate, or whatever other need that comes from the soul, that comes from within. Okay, it's much more than putting words on a page, onto a page. So George Orwell, for example, there is a quote here from George Orwell. Let me put it up on the screen. George Orwell says, he talks about writing a book in his Why I Write newsletter, not newsletter. George Orwell didn't have a newsletter, I think. In his famous essay, he says, writing a book is a horrible, exhausting struggle, like a long bout of some painful illness. One would never undertake such a thing if one were not driven on by some demon whom one can neither resist nor understand. He calls it demon, but it's an invisible, it's another word, I think, for this invisible force. And so, if you feel that force, if you feel that demon and you surrender to it in order to write, so you actually do the work, you actually write something, then you're a real writer. Still, this real writer. Still, we don't need that adjective. We don't need that adjective to, to confirm that we are writers. You're a writer, full stop. Van Gogh painted because he was driven by a desire to feel and a desire to let other people feel. He wanted others, to feel something. And I've got another quote here from his letters, the letters that he wrote to his brother Theo. He wrote this: "What I want and have as my aim is infernally difficult to achieve, and yet I don't think I am raising my sights too high. I want to do drawings that touch some people. I want to get to the point where people say of my work, that man feels deeply. That man feels keenly." You might not want to write for others. Maybe you don't want an audience. So you don't need to have an audience in order to be a writer. Even if your grammar sucks, even if no one reads your stories, even if you've never taken a creative writing workshop, even if you've never made a cent from your writing, you're still a real writer if you feel that force and if you give in to it and you write. That's it. You don't need a talent. This thing about talent, overrated. It's overrated. Talent is something that is given us by nature when we were born. You can work on your skills, but we're not talking about skills, money, talent. We're talking about feeling this demon. Let's call it demon, even though I don't really like this idea of a demon, because it makes me think of something evil. But if you feel this, that's it. You're a real writer. No more questioning, no more self-doubt, no more overthinking about this. And this, I think, can help us do our best work, because it's very hard to write something for an audience, for someone, with this idea in mind that we're not real writers. I'm not a real writer. So it limits your potential. So let's get rid of the adjective. Let's turn the sentence into a positive sentence. So I am a writer, and let's do our best work. Even though you don't want to publish your work, because not all writers are authors, and that's perfectly okay. If I come to your house and you have a pile of papers, and you say, these are all my stories, I've written all these stories, 200 stories, and I wrote them because I wanted, that's it, you're a writer. No more questioning, no more questioning. Thank you. I hope this is helpful. Let me know, what do you think? Am I crazy? Do you agree with me? Who is a writer? Who is I don't want to use that adjective anymore. Who is a writer in your opinion? Let me know in the comments. Thank you for watching. I'll see you in the next video. Bye-bye. Thanks for listening. Thank you for watching. If you're a writer and you want to improve your writing, or you want to keep improving your writing, consider joining my private email list, Better Writers. I send one short email every week. I share tips, insights, things that I learn, book recommendations to help you do one thing only: become a better writer. The link is in the show notes or in the description of this video. Thank you for listening once again. I'll see you in the next episode. Bye-bye.